Okay, hitting record again. Number 2 this week at Antidote Aesthetic. I'm Kelsey Jean Marie, and this morning I am thinking about, I'm reflecting on being a fixer. And I guess that's an interesting point to begin with, the difference between thinking about and reflecting upon. Thinking is really like actively using the mind to try to figure something out, where reflecting, in my experience, is a listening, a deep listening, kind of pausing of the mind and opening it, a stilling of the mind to be able to hear, as opposed to actively leaning into thoughts or fixing anywhere in the thought process and trying to dig in. It's letting the subconscious flow through. So that's what I've been doing this morning. I have a journaling practice going on, and this morning I just love laying in bed. So this morning I didn't even grab my journal. What I did was I just wrote. What crossed my mind was to just use my fingers and be as though I'm writing on my bed sheets. I'm watching the thoughts flow through my mind, and I'm writing because there's something somatically magical about actually using your hand to scribe or scribble the subconscious thoughts that are flowing through, the stream of consciousness writing. So I wanted to honor that practice, but I also just really wanted to stay still without moving, without grabbing things, without getting distracted by something. And so I was noticing that, and this notion of just writing on the bed came through. And that was an idea from my intuition, from my unconscious. I've never done that before, and it wasn't like I was trying to figure out how to not move. I had the desire to not move, and the answer arrived because I was open to it. And it's these subtleties that are important. I'm believing, I'm experiencing, I'm noticing in my writing this morning, in my reflecting. It's these subtleties that really span the difference between fixing and participating as a guide or an exemplary power. I'm a projector in human design, and so being a guide is really part of my character or my soul purpose on earth, or whatever words we want to use. Those are the ones crossing my mind now. And so how does a person attend to the conditioned drive to fix things, to fix oneself, to see problems, to see badness, wrongness, lack, mistakes? How can we attend to opportunity without judgment? How can we attend to opportunity without being a fixer? A fixer automatically suggests that there's something to fix, which would imply that something is broken or wrong. And that is a judgmental experience, and it's an illusion. In our spiritual deep knowing, we're already whole. And so an answer that arrived to me this morning that I noticed that I was writing down because it was flowing from my subconscious is a major practice for me has been, connecting the parts. Because I love I think there's something like a puzzle to fixing as well. That is a turn on or an enthusiasm for me. And I see the opportunities for that around me and within me. And so what I noticed was this train of subconscious flow about dissolving or solving the disconnects between parts, creating or allowing conversation between parts that attends to what would have been appearing as a problem or a brokenness, which was an illusion because underneath that there's already connection. All of the parts intrinsically have a connection to one another, and in that there's wholeness, there's perfection, there's completeness. That is the solution. It's always there. And so any perception of brokenness or disconnect is an illusory experience of being disconnected from that awareness or the presence with that wholeness. And so, semantics and playing with semantics, words, the way words go together in sentences, is delicate is the word that's crossing my mind. It's delicate because it requires attention. And the more we practice offering attention, the more it comes naturally. The more the subconscious arises to meet the practice of speaking in a certain way that attends to the subtleties that meet the deeper needs of acknowledging and incorporating the kind of things that we're talking about. It goes less into the automatic fixing, seeing problems. Here's a solution for that. And it becomes more of a flow with all the parts and kind of a stirring of the parts, a stirring of the pot so the parts meet themselves and find, reclaim their natural connections. It feels like a bit of a messy metaphor, and yet it feels also really on point. I'm a person who loves relationship. For as long as I can literally remember this lifetime, I've really been aware of others, been aware of my proximity and distance with others. And there's a lot of room for the perception of needing to fix in terms of being aware of relationships, especially when you grew up or were conditioned by other fixers. And I think fixing, I've already mentioned it, but just to repeat, because it takes us, 7 times to integrate something, so we can just keep touching on it from slightly different angles, and that's what the subconscious will do. It's very poetic. It will just swirl around, touching everything again and again, and that connects the pieces, it connects the dots. It happens very naturally. There is a natural flow that we can ride to do so. And I think that is attending to, loving to love, to actively love, is to attend to stretch towards. And so our deepest propensities is an energetic reality that follows the energetic laws of the universe, where energy will be always in motion, and so it's always moving towards itself, its own relief, its own fulfillment, which is connection between all of the pieces. And so in that, it can be really effortless. It's like getting our mind and our conditioned ways of using the mind, dissolving that. And even a question is arising in me now: isn't that fixing a perceived problem? Wanting to allow that deeper, natural way where that connection is flowing. I am perceiving a very normal, by normal I mean common, a common issue for humans that I see around me and that I've experienced as a human, is not being tapped into that deep natural flow where energy is following the natural laws of the universe and will exist as it does in those natural laws, which is very like organized chaos meeting all of its own needs. We're conditioned to exist in a more surface or superficial, disconnected landscape away from the center of ourselves. It's in the center of ourselves that we inherently know about that flow of connection. We experience it. We are it. And so, I think acknowledging it here is a step in attending to it, in allowing it, which does respond to a common issue. And maybe, in that, I really feel aware that it's a gradual process. It's an ongoing allowing. It becomes a way of being. It's not something that I can right now see in myself or someone else and fix it, go from there being a disconnect to a total connection. It's more of a stroking. Like my dog is sitting beside me and I am petting him. And I think that feels different. Stroking something that's painful, being with it, offering it attention, and attention is love. Like, there's a quality of attention that equates to a quality of love. And I think often love is misconstrued with fixing. If everything is love, then fixing is also love, because it is just people trying to love and being confused. And that confusion is painful, both for the fixer and whatever they're focused on fixing. And And so this using a presence of attention, a quality of acknowledgement that contains an awareness of a pain, an issue, a disconnect, a desire for something to be different, and being with that while also being with the awareness that the answer is underneath the issue already. It already exists within the problem. There's nothing to fix, there is something to allow. There is a pain, a disconnect to be with. And in that quality of presence being with the issue dissolves. The connection is already there, and as you bring your warmth there by being with it, by seeing it, not judging it as bad or wrong, just being with it as something that is there to be with. And that already contains its own solution. And it's like that melting, it's like butter melting in the warmth of your quality of presence. And it's that knowing of the answer already being there that enables the warmth, as opposed to think about how maybe cold or hard, rigid you might feel if you're seeing a problem and you're standing there it has to be fixed. The solution isn't already there. You have to go looking for it. You have to figure this out. It's I'm feeling immediately exhausted. I'm feeling this tension, pain in the back of my, between my shoulder blades, the back of my heart. It's so heavy. It's oh my gosh, another thing. When is it ever going to end? It's that right there is a coldness. It's resonating with dissonance, separation, a lack. And so that is not the most quality presence. That's a conditioned way of being in a lack or a scarcity mentality where something is needed that isn't already there. And we believe it. When we're in that state of mind, of perception that's been conditioned to us through our lineages, through the systems that we're in, through general common ways of thinking, seeing, believing, and living, we believe it because we're constructing that reality around us, and we're just ignoring, we're missing, we're separated from, we're disassociated from the solution already being there, the warmth of that answer already being there. That creates a sense of ease, of trust, of joy, of already completeness, of already got what you need, and it creates a natural magnetism, a natural sense of being taken care of, and all of those are warm, melty butter, as opposed to a chunk of cold butter coming right from the fridge that you're trying to cut into and trying to spread on toast, and it's not really working, and it's not this experience of already existing satisfaction. It's oh, this butter might melt if my toast is hot enough, if I scrape it in exactly the right thickness or whatever, and maybe metaphors aren't necessarily perfection because there's still some distance involved, but I think for me that melty butter is just creating this warmth sensation, this fluid, gently viscous sensation in the front of my chest where my body is understanding the difference between attending to my awareness that everything is already complete and whole and has the answer for itself, and that like the separation and scarcity is a conditioned illusion, a distance from my own inner knowing of that answer already being there. Versus I very much remember living, I'm going to say the age of 7 onwards, for quite a while. Chewy, stop. Where that wasn't there. Everything seemed like a problem to be fixed. Everything was separated from itself. I looked around and I saw people disassociated, disconnected from themselves. I could see that like glowing center. I remember seeing and thinking in my mom, like her light is going out. Like I just watched her get further and further from her center, which made my experience of her more and more rigid. Even though she's still very warm and tender and caring and loving, like part of being a fixer is martyring, seeing problems and needing to fix them. As we lean into that, we martyr our connection with that inner center, with that inner knowing that everything already contains its own answer, and what we need is quality of presence to be there and melt the illusion of separation, to melt back into that center point, to see and sense the answer already being there, to see and sense and stand in our own trust of that. I remember being a kid and a teenager and having basically no access to that. Mostly because I was trying to fit in. I martyred that inner sense of knowing that I'm going to say I can almost remember having as an earlier child, like blips of it, but already just like pushing that away to match the people around me, to fit in better, to do what they were doing, because I didn't want to get exiled. I didn't want to be the black sheep. I wanted to be part of the family. I wanted to be like my older cousins and my aunties and, even my dad and my uncle, definitely my mom. I wanted to be just like my mom because she was the center of my world. And I think experiencing your parent as the center of your world is part of an attachment process in animals and humans. Humans are animals, but because all of our parents, pretty much, like majority of them, were conditioned into this way of seeing and experiencing separation and scarcity and martyring that connection with self and with soul for the systematized cultural long-term expressions of separation and scarcity from soul and self, we mirror that. Our natural biorhythms match those of our parents. We are all very psychic, telepathic, empathic, so we are just absorbing what is going on around us, the patterns around us. So we're set up to have to find our way back into our own center. And in that way, it's like a puzzle, it's a maze, it's kind of something to fix and solve. And I treated it that way for a long time, and yes, that was thrilling in some ways, and I definitely saw that issue alive in my boyfriends and my friends and my family, and was driven to try to find answers for them, and I was often like presenting answers and directives and just being shunned and shamed and asked, like told to shut up. People don't want to be told how they're feeling or what's going on with them, and I get it. I didn't get it. back then, because it was like this drive to be of service, this drive to get back to center, but I didn't actually have very much context for that drive in me, or the ability to contextualize it in the way that I am here and now, which is that the answer is already there. I was reaching and searching for answers outside of myself and trying to apply that to myself and others. And I've done that even up to recently. That habit is still there, and then it's this melting back into my own body, into my own bubble, and getting back into that center point, into that trust, into that knowing. And it's not a knowing particularly with the mind, though the mind is on board in the knowing. It's this knowing through my whole being. It's an emotional contentment, fulfillment. It's emotional relief, contentment, fulfillment, satisfaction. And then the mind doesn't have anything to go looking for. It's not searching. It's there. It's in a more of a state of stillness, of observation, of witnessing, that can allow the things that I was speaking of at the beginning, the reflecting versus thinking. And that's a major part in, enlightenment, in living beyond consciousness, which is the most relieving, satisfying state we could be in during this human experience. Just even touching into it for moments integrates all of this that we're talking about. And so that satisfaction of emotional satiation creates this mental satiation where there isn't this reaching and looking outside the self. And then the body is on board. You sense it, you feel the truth of that through the body. And that's going to create a lot of natural rectification of illness or disease or disorder, and which just enables more and more of that centered state of being, a really healthy wholeness that's already there to be tapped into. And likewise, it's very spiritually fulfilling. You can then thereby feel your connection with everything, your presence with everything. And that's what spirituality is. It's connection. And so there aren't so many blocks in the system, emotionally, mentally, physically, that stop or block that sense of constant continuous connection to everything. The constant continuous connection to everything is always there underneath the blocks. It is the baseline. The constant continuous connection to everything is your baseline. It's my baseline. It is the baseline of everything in existence, of everything on earth, everything in the universe. That is our baseline. That is who and what we are. When we say we're all one, we're all the same, like that is it. And then it spirals out into, okay, we're in these different bodies with different systems, but even then there's a basic baseline to our systems that's all the same, that can honor that connectedness. But there is a spiral to ride out into the uniqueness of each of us, and that's where all the differences and differentiations come from, and we can get lost in that and start to believe the separation from our own center, our center that directly rhymes with, connects with everything, that is just so harnessed, tethered, grounded in that connectedness, and it never won't be. It's our awareness that gets untethered from that center place of already knowing, of already having all the answers, of already being in constant continuous connection with everything that is the answer, because then energy is flowing, it's circulating, it's responding to itself, it's meeting its own needs when we are tapped into that place of connection. So I'm going to leave it at that. And it's just nice what I'm experiencing is in my heart. My heart is saying, yeah, so we don't even need any fixers. So don't waste your energy. Just keep enjoying this conversation. Keep coming back to this conversation. Doesn't it feel amazing? Yeah. Love, love, love. Thanks for listening. Thank you for being here.